Now, South African President Jacob Zuma says Zimbabwe's feuding leaders have agreed to a package of measures to try to save their fragile unity government. Mr. Zuma spoke to reporters after concluding 2 days of talks in Harare with Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe, Prime Minister Morgan Tsvangirai and their respective parties. Mr. Zuma says he is optimistic after meeting with the two leaders.
I've had fruitful discussions with all the signatories to the GPA, their negotiating teams, leading Zimbabwean personalities and other key stakeholders. I'm very encouraged by the spirit of cooperation displayed by the leaders and all the parties.
Mr. Zuma says the measures will move the process forward substantially, but he did not specify the measures, nor did he give many details of his talks. Despite the apparent progress, two notable Zimbabweans say it will take more than Mr. Zuma's intervention to move the country forward.
There is no way out except having an election. And that's the only legitimate way to retain power or change over governments. And that's the only option left.
This position by Director Indai Chifunde of the Zimbabwe Election Support Network is shared by Mr. Zuma as well as Zimbabwe's political leaders who have all called for a 2011 election. At a Washington, D.C. event recently sponsored by Freedom House, Chifunde and Justina Mukoko of the Zimbabwe Peace Project said that Zimbabweans are discouraged by the deadlock in their year-old government of national unity created by the Global Political Agreement, or GPA, between the parties of President Robert Mugabe, Prime Minister Morgan Tsvangirai and Deputy Prime Minister Arthur Mutambara.
The GNU is not working. There are a number of outstanding issues, and it seems that even the GPA agreement is not fulfilled.
A recent survey shows that most Zimbabweans favor new elections over their current coalition government. Holding elections, stipulated by a new constitution, are the ultimate goal of the unity government. But that process, says Mukoko, a recent International Women of Courage Award recipient, has been painful, divisive, and is far from completion.
There are so many documents that are being looked at in terms of the Constitution. And the document that is bringing a lot of conflict is the one that is known as the Kariba draft, which was drafted by ZANU-PF and the two MDC formations. There was no woman on that panel, and I do not think that it can be a draft that can stand for all citizens in Zimbabwe.
But Chifunde says the Constitution should not be a factor.
There are very good countries we do have, which we know, with very good constitutions in Uganda, very good electoral laws in Nigeria. But when it comes to implementation, it's completely the opposite. You can decide to selectively apply those. So that kind of thinking also says it doesn't matter really. Let's have elections and they'll see how it goes.
Many Zimbabweans credit the inclusive government for reviving an economy that was in a free fall and the adoption of multiple currencies over the Zimbabwean dollar.
Food is on the shelf, but I suppose another question remains, how many Zimbabweans can afford to buy that food? And at the same time, I would say for the greater part of 2009, we had teachers go back to the classroom, and there was some education that took place. And the health delivery system also significantly improved.
But all that is shaky now as civil servants threaten nationwide strikes soon if government fails to address their grievances of poor wages and working conditions. Mukoko, whose arrest and prosecution in 2008 for allegedly trying to overthrow the government gained her worldwide recognition, also credits her eventual exoneration to the GNU. However, she says the fight for human rights is far from over.
A lot of our colleagues are being arrested, intimidated, they are being threatened, and that is a bit of a concern to us because it means that we are unable to do our work as we are mandated.
Many fear elections could bring back the violence of the runoff elections of 2008. But the panelists here urge Zimbabweans to demand a conducive election environment and to participate fully. But Briggs Bomber of Africa Action says expectations that Mr. Zuma will foster democracy in Zimbabwe are misplaced.
The way things shape up in Zimbabwe is going to depend for the most part on the internal players, the MDC and ZANU-PF in particular. So President Zuma's interest, as was President Mbeki's interest, is to contain the crisis in Zimbabwe so that it does not spill into South Africa too much.
The panelists say an updated voters' roll, an independent electoral commission, and a free media environment are just some of the crucial factors for free and fair elections to take place.